There are alerts, and then there are the kind of warnings that carve themselves into the fabric of reality. This was the second kind. Protocol Crimson 7. A galactic emergency signal that overrides everything. Planetary lockdowns, active military campaigns, even the annual Sapient Culinary Showcase. The last time it went off, an entire star was swallowed by something that refused to emit radiation. So when it sounded again, the galaxy listened. Within 4 hours, the 12 major species of the Galactic Concord had abandoned their posts, called emergency jumps, and assembled in the only place the stars couldn't shake apart. The conclave spire, suspended in null space. The Velcran hierarchy arrived first, their ship folded in from higher dimensions with the grace of a spider slipping into a web. Velcrans didn't show emotion. They didn't rush. They didn't even attend things early, which made their appearance within 6 hours terrifying. Then came the Threxari lumens. Sentient plasma forms encased in gravitic sheaths, glowing with so much energy the shielding needed constant recalibration. They entered with thunder. "This is unacceptable," flared Ambassador Virex in a coronal bloom of heat. What did the humans do this time? The chamber fell silent. Not because the question was rude. Rudeness is standard policy in emergency situations, but because everyone was thinking the same thing. The humans had done something. Again, Ambassador Scrake of the Jerlin Nest Worlds, who normally required 3 interpreters, leaned forward on their kittenous haunches. What have they unleashed? The answer? A crisis in the far Dagger expanse. 3 star systems, minor skirmishes, mining disputes. The sort of thing the Concord handled with tariffs and painfully long treaties. Until it wasn't. Until a new signal emerged. Until entire defense networks went offline. Until something older than memory stirred in the void between. The Mire-born Leviathan. Thought extinct since the Age of Flame. Now en route. And Earth, in its infinite subtlety, had responded to the interstellar SOS by sending exactly 1 person. The human ship was called the SS Sheffield, a slab-sided, atmospheric re-entry vehicle that looked like a cargo hauler and moved like a declaration of indifference. When it docked with the conclave spire, the magnetic seal groaned. Out stepped a man, late 20s to early 30s in Earth years. Crisp dress uniform, polished boots. The posture of a soldier who'd only recently learned to sit in chairs. No entourage, no weapons, no translator, just a datapad and a lanyard that read, Lieutenant Commander Malcolm Pierce, Terran Diplomatic Corps. He walked into the most powerful room in the galaxy, looked around at 12 civilizations older than Earth's tectonic plates, and said, "So? Just that." "So what?" he clarified after a beat. "Who started the mess I'm supposed to clean up?" Half the room short-circuited. Ambassador Rulik of the Toshari Collective burst into 6 discordant tones of offense. "This is a breach of decorum," snapped Virex. "You will show proper deference to this assembly." Pierce tilted his head. "Here's the thing about deference," he said. "You don't demand it from people who haven't seen results." A pause. The kind of pause people don't talk through because they're busy reevaluating their own survival strategies. Then, without waiting for permission, Pierce tapped his datapad. A projection flared in the chamber's center. It was not a map. It was an autopsy. Fleet routes, supply manifests, black market transactions, financial data, covert communications. "This," said Pierce, "isn't a war. It's an investment strategy. Somebody's getting rich off this fight." Enter the Meyer-born Leviathan. 17 vessels, 8 kilometers long. Hulls carved with sigils that made physicists weep. The original council records listed them as extinct. Turns out, those records were optimistic. Now they were coming, and the expanse was ripe for the taking. "It's not a coincidence," Pierce said. "They've been watching, waiting. And while you argued about mineral rights, someone invited the old gods back." The chamber panicked. Pierce smiled. Earth's real fleet wasn't made of battleships. It was 4,000 merchant-class vessels, tour liners, cargo freighters, research ships, and deep space haulers, spread across 17 sectors, each one innocuous, each one perfectly placed. "Our military doctrine is simple," Pierce said. "We don't start fights. We end conversations." The chamber stared, then stared harder when Pierce activated another protocol. A cascade of comms burst to life. Thousands of signals, not encrypted, not military, civilian. Open broadcasts, personal channels, chatty merchant banter, and all of them carried the same message. Help is coming. The Leviathan demanded surrender. Pierce sent them music, jazz, obscure earth tunes, food recipes, children's books, documentaries on sea otters. "We call it cultural saturation," Pierce said, "also known as the care package offensive." The Leviathan hesitated. The ships slowed. The oldest of them paused to ask, "What is rhythm?" The rest of the galaxy woke up. Earth didn't make treaties. It made friends. The Cavrexi matron worlds offered their diplomatic fleets. The Bolari freeholds sent medical support. The Ikari nomads opened every listening array they owned. Dozens of minor factions, unaffiliated and often overlooked, showed up armed to the teeth, because Earth had helped them, asked nothing, fixed ships, shared food, told stories, and when Earth called, they came. The Leviathan began transmitting hesitantly. They asked for explanations. They asked for peace. They asked for jazz. "You turned the galaxy into a community project," muttered the Velcran diplomat. "It was always a community," Pierce replied. "Someone just had to send the invite. The rest is classified, but we call it the day the war ended before it started." And Pierce, he went back to Earth, with 17 Leviathan envoys, and one hell of a mixtape. The Leviathan ships came to a complete halt. No demands, no threats, just silence. The kind of silence that made strategists nervous and historians write drafts. They had not slowed because of military might, but because, perhaps for the first time in 3,000 years, someone had shown them something new: culture, color, curiosity, and the idea that you could learn about a species not through conquest, but through casserole recipes and saxophone solos. A message pulsed across council frequencies, bouncing between signal buoys and listening posts. Transmission from Mirborn Vessel 01. Query: Purpose of improvisational music? Pierce blinked at the message. He tapped back. Response: expression without a plan, like strategy, but with emotion. Another pause. Follow-up: is emotion a strategic resource? Pierce grinned. You have no idea. In the conclave chamber, representatives stared at each other, some with feathers puffed in disbelief, others rippling through color spectrums that expressed a full range of emotional paradoxes. Ambassador Scrake clicked. "They are not attacking." "Not yet," growled Virex. "They may be adapting." "They're asking about improvisation," said the Ikri envoy. "I don't think they're adapting for battle. I think they're adapting for playlists." Pierce folded his arms. "You've all fought these things before, or thought you did. And every time, you brought fleets and firepower. We brought an invitation to a block party." The Council demanded a vote. They called it Defensive Contingency Theta. It involved combined fleets, fallback lines, and planetary evacuation schedules. Pierce raised one hand. "With respect, deploying your entire naval reserve into a single theater is the worst possible move." Virex flared. "We are not amateurs." "No," Pierce agreed. "You're predictable. That's worse." He brought up a new simulation. Massive Council fleets converging, then being cut down from 3 vectors at once. "This is what they're counting on. You'll do what you always do, and that's how civilizations get archived." Silence. Then Pierce offered another option: distributed resistance. Not a war machine. A network. Dozens of independent cells, all with their own objectives. No central command to target. No single point of failure. He called it Operation Mosaic. Civilian ships volunteered first. The Wandering Cutlass, a salvage barge run by a trio of retired asteroid miners, the Galileo's Gaze, a science ship that had once mapped the gravity wells of a dying star, the Purple Finch, a vacation cruiser whose guests voted unanimously to join. Every single one was equipped with whatever it could manage: modified grav tethers, inverted deflector fields, improvised EMP drones made from toaster coils. But more importantly, they carried something the Leviathan fleet didn't understand: unity by choice. Pierce said, "They're used to order imposed by power. They have never seen order formed by trust." The Council stared at the map again, the chaos, the randomness, and then the patterns began to emerge, like constellations in motion. Somewhere in the black, a Mire-born warship received its first piece of Earth's stand-up comedy. It didn't understand all of it, but it replayed the segment about airline food 5 times. Another ship paused mid-tactical alignment to broadcast its own poetry. It was crude. It was terrifying. It rhymed. A third ship requested a definition of friend. Pierce sent back a video of a golden retriever helping a kitten climb a couch. The message was clear: you do not have to be alone to be strong. Back in the conclave chamber, the Ikari delegate looked at Pierce. "You weaponized empathy." Pierce shook his head. "Empathy isn't a weapon. It's a foundation." The Velcran delegate folded its limbs. "We're witnessing social mechanics as a form of deterrence." "No," Pierce replied. "You're witnessing how humans survive each other." The Mire-born fleet, once an unstoppable force of precision and terror, had paused, not stalled, not defeated, just re-evaluating. Across thousands of monitoring stations, the same anomaly was recorded: tactical recalculations, power draw shifting from weapons to comms, energy redistribution patterns consistent with curiosity. The Conclave Council was stunned. "We've spent eons preparing for brute force," murmured Chancellor Rulik of the Tashari. "We never prepared for curiosity." Pierce tapped his pad, and brought up a fresh projection. Then, let's use it. Operation Mosaic entered Phase 2. The outer systems lit up with a mix of civilian and military coordination never before attempted. Mining rigs became listening posts. Agricultural stations began relaying tactical data. Even deep space observatories pivoted to strategic defense hubs. And everywhere, Earth's so-called merchant fleet turned out to be a carefully seeded web of information relays, sensor platforms, decoy arrays, and, in more than a few cases, heavily modified hulls with suspiciously powerful cargo handling systems that just happened to look like railguns. "This is chaos," Ambassador Scrake said. Pierce smiled. "This is jazz." The Meyerborn transmitted again. Request, clarify Earth definition, block party. Pierce replied with drone footage of a New York street during a summer fire hydrant celebration. Follow-up. Query. Why is everyone smiling while covered in water? Response. Because, for a few hours, they forgot they were alone. It wasn't just Earth transmitting anymore. The Kavrexi shared the art of sunset calligraphy. The Threxari released centuries of recorded flame dance combat. The Ophini opened their ancestral song libraries, sonic records designed to pass down emotions across bloodlines. The Leviathan began to listen, and then they began to send things back. Encoded rhythms, tone-shifted pulses, primitive but deliberate attempts at harmony. Pierce leaned back in his seat. "They're singing. They're trying," corrected the Bolari envoy. "The difference is everything." Of the 17 Leviathan dreadnoughts, 5 ceased all weapons activity. 3 requested additional cultural files. 2 asked for diplomatic protocol guidance. 1 ship, designated Myraborn 009, beamed back a full-length human movie, a romantic comedy. Nobody knew what that meant, but it felt hopeful. The council met again. This time, they did not yell. "Is this real?" asked the Ikari. "Are we witnessing the end of an extinction engine?" "No," said Pierce. "We're witnessing a beginning." "The beginning of what?" asked Virex. Pierce looked at the stars outside the spire's dome. "Something better." The Leviathan fleet no longer looked like a predator. It resembled a school of ancient beasts caught mid-migration, hesitant, scattered, and quietly changing. Across the galaxy, data from civilian vessels poured into Concord networks. Pattern recognition subroutines flagged one consistent behavior. The Leviathan ships weren't aligning for attack. They were aligning for signal clarity. They wanted to hear, and the galaxy answered. The humans led the cultural broadcast, but others joined with fervor. The Yulthrin shared their tradition of sky scribing, giant ships trailing ion plumes to paint temporary artwork on the upper atmosphere of gas giants. The Valtari used synchronized starlight arrays to transmit harmony-based mathematics. Even the warlike Drazic tribes sent footage of ritual duels, edited, annotated, and set to music with subtitles helpfully added by Earth's meme archivists. Pierce monitored all of it, fingers flying across his tablet. "We're building a bridge," he muttered, "with food, jokes, music, and dance." Ambassador Scrake watched one screen showing a Leviathan dreadnought attempting to emulate Earth jazz improvisation in signal pulses. "It's hideous," Scrake said flatly. "It's a start," Pierce replied. Then came the message that silenced every channel, a transmission marked as Priority Null, from the Leviathan Prime. Statement: "We were forged to erase. Our purpose, was the silence of variance. We have heard variance. We have heard joy. Another pulse. Query. May we be something else? No one moved. Even the Velkren delegation, emotionless and ancient, folded all their limbs into a respectful curl. Pierce stood, turned on a wideband open mic and said, "Of course you can. We did." The final phase of Operation Mosaic began, not a battle, not even a treaty, an invitation. Leviathan dreadnoughts, once feared extinction-class warships, slowly repositioned into orbit around the three expanse systems, not to conquer, but to help rebuild. They unloaded materials they'd salvaged across centuries: energy cores, structural alloys, even databanks, ancient knowledge long thought lost. The first Leviathan emissary requested to meet Pierce. In person. It arrived in a pod forged from black steel and plasma silk, stepped out, and simply asked, "What is a joke?" Pierce taught it. Badly. The emissary laughed anyway, a sound that distorted reality and made three lights flicker. It asked for another. The change in the Meyerborn was no longer theoretical. Entire dreadnoughts, once dedicated to extermination, had become orbiting universities. They transmitted open-access knowledge cores in formats designed for multi-species understanding. Even their shipboard AI constructs, previously weapons platforms, began running cooperative language subroutines with regional dialect support. One Leviathan cruiser asked to host an interstellar poetry slam. Another requested feedback on a sculpture it made from salvaged armor plating. The Council, unused to miracles, was speechless. Pierce stood before the conclave again. This time he wasn't questioned. He was listened to. "Change is never instant," he said. "But it always starts somewhere. You expected us to bring fire. We brought a recipe book, a playlist, and a very large group chat." Virex no longer flared with fury. His plasma flickered in a tone the Threxari used for reluctant admiration. "You ended a war with soup and sarcasm. Don't forget sea otters," Pierce added. Across the galaxy, something new had begun. Kavrexi traders were seen docked beside Meyerborn ships, exchanging resources for translated folklore. The Jerlin Nest Worlds opened a diplomatic mission aboard a Leviathan science vessel turned museum. Even the Drazik, previously incapable of humor, circulated a meme about sneaky humans and their jazz warfare. It was progress. The galaxy didn't become perfect overnight. But the war that never happened? That was a good start. In a closing transmission to Earth, the Leviathan Prime said only this: "Thank you for sharing your noise. We would like to learn how to make our own." Pierce sent them a starter pack, a saxophone, a recipe for chili, and a playlist titled Humanity, Greatest Hits, Vol. 1. The war never came, but the music never stopped.